Yo, what is up? It's your boy Coolesто here, back from the dead with another LSW1 video. We're going to be getting you up and running, ready to speedrun LEGO Star Wars the video game on PC. We're going to install both the base game and SpecialK for the optimal experience. All the links for everything is going to be down in the description. Before we start, shout out Mel. Mel's the one that figured almost all of this out. I'm just the monkey making the video guide. Mel wrote this text guide almost 2 years ago, but unfortunately, if you follow this text guide exactly as it's written today, you're going to end up with an install that unfortunately most users just can't launch. 2 years ago when this guide came out and I tried to follow it the first time, I talked with Mel and they helped me troubleshoot extensively. We realized that they forgot to add a specific step to this guide, and after carrying out that step, it works perfectly. In this video, I'll be showing you that complete and working install method, as well as presenting that in a step-by-step video format that should be easier to follow along with. Mel's guide is linked down in the description if you would like to view it. So without any further ado, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to need this LEGO Star Wars installer. We want to download this entire folder, so we're going to click download all. That's going to zip it up. And once your download is complete, I'm just going to drag that to my desktop. Then I'm going to extract that. And now we've got this LSW1 folder. In this folder, we're going to go down to setup.exe, and we're just going to run that. And I am going to put in a password because this is on a secondary user. This install wizard should be pretty straightforward. So accept the license agreement, of course. Don't change this default install directory, just leave it how it is, and then click install. Alright, this section of the installer may not appear if you are on AMD or otherwise non-NVIDIA graphics. Don't freak out. It's totally fine, works fine. It worked fine for me back when I had an AMD card. So if you're sitting there like, oh my god, his setup's doing something different than mine, don't freak out. Just continue the installer all the way to the end. And now when you're done, you can uncheck either of these if you would like, but I'll leave them both. I am going to uncheck that one because right now, in its current state, if we actually navigate to that default install directory and we try to run this, and I have to type in a password again, and I did it wrong. You can see that you're going to get a little bit of a loading bar, but then just nothing. It doesn't even try to launch. And this is where this guide has sat for the past 2 years, unfortunately. Locked in my DMs with Mel has been this hidden step, and this link is going to be in the description. But this is another Google Drive link. We're going to download this patch. This is an updater for the game. Yeah, Google's going to give you a warning about it, and depending on how your antivirus and your browser are set up, it might give you trouble here as well. It actually didn't for me today. That's nice. But once you've downloaded this updater, you're just going to drag this updater right into your main game directory where your exe is. You will have to give administrator access for that. And then once you've got it moved in here, we're going to run that updater. And of course, I have to type in a password again. Alright, and then we're just going to hit continue to install this update. And it's been successfully updated. And at this point, now we have a functional LEGO Star Wars game. And actually, if I do run this now, I will show you. There it goes. Hey, it boots. Now, the problem with this, you can already start to see it. It's especially apparent on my display because I am running a 21:9 ultra wide. This game is stock 4:3 aspect ratio, and I'm stretching it to what is essentially a 7:3 aspect ratio. As you can see, the circles aren't really circles. Everything is stretched. We got wide Qui-Gon over here, you know. So the game in this current state, I mean, it's playable, but it's not as intended. Alright, now that we have completed installing LEGO Star Wars 1 for PC, we're going to download SpecialK. SpecialK is pretty easy to install. Just download the installer and run it. I get to put in a password. Alright. This installer is also very simple. Just next, accept the agreement. Next, 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 install. Uncheck launch SpecialK, and the reason for that is we actually need to run SpecialK as an administrator in order for it to work with LSW1. Once you get into SpecialK, if you have games showing up in library, I'm going to recommend you go to settings, library, and uncheck these 4 boxes. By default, SpecialK is going to detect all of your Steam games and other games on your PC, and if you launch one of them while SpecialK is running, then it's going to inject itself. This way, only games that we add to SpecialK will be affected. To add a game, come down here to the bottom left, browse to your default directory for LEGOStarWars.exe, click Add Game, and then click Play. You'll immediately be able to tell you did it right because you'll have notifications in the bottom left and top of your screen. If you don't have any of these notifications, it's because you're not running as an administrator, and you do need to do that. Once we get in game here, the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select my resolution. I am going to run on 1600 by 1200 because it's the max resolution. If you are on a 1080p monitor, 1080p is too short to display a 1200 pixel tall image, so you're going to have to use a smaller resolution. Whatever resolution you choose, you need to remember that because it will be relevant later. But I am selecting 1600 by 1200. Alright, and I've just paused to do a little bit of OBS work. This is what I'm seeing on my screen now. I'm seeing a full screen window of the game at the proper aspect ratio with black bars on the side. Without any further ado, let's head in game and actually get this set up. So the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to get this to be a competition legal setup. In order to submit runs to the speedrun.com leaderboard, we need to limit our frame rate to 60 FPS. And to do that, we're going to press Control Shift Backspace, and that's going to open our SpecialK menu. Frame rate limiter should be open by default, but if not, it's under here. Click Frame Rate Limits checkbox, and then Control click this value and change it to 60. Press Enter, and now you can see I'm locked at a perfect, stable 60 FPS. The leaderboard rules also require that you have an on-screen display showing that you have the frame rate limited, and SpecialK can do this as well. If you come to on-screen display and turn on display OSD, you can turn off the GPU stats, the title, the clock. Frame rate, you can go down to compact if you want just this 60. That's perfectly good, good enough. I'm a little bit of a nerd, so I like to have frame time, frame number, clock, but that's just me. Right under on-screen display then, we're going to go to notifications and just turn on silent mode. That's just going to hide the notifications that come up when you launch the game. A little bit annoying. After this, we're going to go to display. We want to change full screen mode to windowed mode. So we're going to click force override and now windowed mode. If for whatever reason you click windowed mode and nothing happens and this still says full screen mode, don't panic. Just close the game and relaunch it and you should be in windowed mode. Sometimes SpecialK can be a little bit iffy about it the first time, but it worked fine for me this time. And then after that, come down here to refresh rate, and we want to turn this refresh rate all the way up. For my monitor, that's 160 Hertz. Now, the game is still locked at the 60 FPS that we set up before, but the window that we're viewing the game through is updating at 160 FPS now for me. And this is just going to reduce latency, reduce your input lag. Right, once we've changed the refresh rate, we want to close out of that and come down to window management. If we turn on continue rendering and treat foreground as active, this is going to help us to alt tab better. And cursor boundaries unrestrict, just to make sure we don't get trapped in this window if we wanted to alt tab or click on something on a second monitor. At this point, we have a choice to make. You can either play in borderless full screen or in windowed. Right now I'm basically in borderless full screen. The only difference is I need to change this. And if you're playing in borderless full screen, you want your display resolution set to your game resolution. Now, I personally play windowed, so from this point forward, we're going to be showing how to play in windowed. If you want to play in borderless full screen, you're done at this point. For windowed, we're going to change this to borderless, and we're going to change our display resolution to match our monitor's resolution. And as you can see, this is now stretched to fill my screen, but we're going to fix that. So we've got our display resolution matching our monitor. Now we're going to come down to window management, and override resolution is where we're going to set the Windows resolution. So this game I'm playing in 1600 by 1200, so I'm going to type in 1600 by 1200, and it won't update until you change another setting. So just toggle off borderless and then toggle it back on. And now we have a 1600 by 1200 window. Now I'm going to take this opportunity to restart my game because, as you can see, the scaling has messed up a little bit when we went to windowed. When you switch to windowed, when you first launch the game, it might be stretched like this, but this is super easy to fix and go back to how you set it. If you just enter the menu with Control-Shift-Backspace again and go to window management, just toggle borderless off and back on, and now we have exactly how we left it with a 1600 by 1200 window. Now at this point, this is great, right? 1600 by 1200 window, it's pixel perfect. It can be a slightly better, in my opinion, and I'm going to show you how. We need just a tiny bit of napkin math to figure out how to do this. So I'm going to pull up two calculators on screen here. The first calculation that we're going to do, my monitor is 1440 tall, and the game resolution is 1200, so we're going to divide those two and get 1.2 for my scaling factor. Then I'm going to take the horizontal game resolution, which is 1600, and multiply it by that scale factor, and that's going to give me 1920. What this is telling me then is if I change this to be a 1920 by 1440 window, and toggle that on and off, and then scroll down to X offset, and set this, control-click to set an exact value, set this to 1. And this is going to left align a full screen window of 1920 by 1440, keeping the same aspect ratio. The only other thing left to do at this point is go down to window layering and choose multitasking on top. This is going to allow the game window to cover the taskbar when it's active. If you need your taskbar, you can click on your taskbar, and then your taskbar is usable, right? But while you're playing the game, unless you have this Windows 10 taskbar glitch that haunts me all the time, there we go. The game should cover your taskbar. This is the best of both worlds in my opinion. You're getting the window size of borderless full screen while also getting the multitasking capability of windowed. I can have a timer and a stream and whatever over here. This is my preferred way to play the game, and at this point we are completely done with the SpecialK setup. Alright, so at this point the only thing standing between you and LEGO Star Wars World Record is getting your controller to work with the game. Unfortunately, this is a topic that I really cannot give you step-by-step advice for. It's going to vary based on your controller, but I can give you some pointers and some basic principles to guide you in your quest to get them working. First things first, this game is X input compatible. It is not D input compatible. If you have D input controllers, you will not be able to bind them in game. You will need some kind of software translation layer to translate your device into X input. So for example, I use a Mayflash GameCube controller adapter. That is a D input device. It does not work natively. So I use this program called X360CE, and what this does, it's an Xbox 360 controller emulator. I've bound my stick and my buttons, and it allows me to emulate an Xbox 360 controller, which is X input. This allows the game to see my controller. I can't recommend this software, unfortunately, because it's kind of janky, and I don't 100% know how I got it to work in the first place, so I definitely can't guide people to set it up themselves. But if you can't find anything else, this might work for you. Just, it's painful. The other guiding principle I can give you is that this game expects square-gated stick inputs. So this was a lot more common back in the day, especially like flight sim sticks and stuff like that, where sticks would have a square gate. Modern controllers, of course, use circular gated analog sticks. So when you calibrate a circular stick in Windows, it's actually bounding it inside of this square gate. And this square gate is what LEGO Star Wars uses for inputs for the stick. This causes issues with diagonal movement because, as you can see, while a max input for this square gate would be up here, this circular gated controller only makes it about 3/4 of the way, which in this game can result in walking animation and slow movement in diagonals. I do have a fix for this, but it is kind of GameCube controller specific. If we look at this picture, this black outline approximates a GameCube controller's notches, and this blue box approximates the square gate that would be formed on a normal calibration. If you calibrate this in Windows, and instead of tracing the outline of your stick when it tells you to, you instead push it into the 4 corner notches of your stick, this will create a square gate inside your stick that allows you max input at the corners, and your cardinal directions will just revert to max value. Like I said, this is kind of GameCube specific because the downside to this is if you miss this notch, if you're not perfect at getting it in this notch, and you're, say, just a little bit high and then you move it down into that notch, well, your square gate's going to be bounded up here then. So you do want to be pretty precise and get as close to exactly in the corner as possible. If you do get it precise, though, my opinion, this is like, it feels exactly like playing on GameCube. It's literally the best setup that I have found. I have 1,000 hours in LSW1 for GameCube, and for a long time PC just did not click with me at all because the controls were just different. I couldn't get used to using DualShocks. This feels OG. This feels great. If you are an old head GameCube runner for some reason, highly recommend this. That probably only applies to about like 4 or 5 people total, but Yo, Editing Coolesто here. I realized I didn't really give you much to go off of if you don't have GameCube controllers, so here's a little bit on fixing diagonal movement for other stuff. DS4 Windows is a really good program for translating DualShock controllers into X input. I've used it before. And the relevant setting here is going to be anti-dead zone. You can see here I've set it to 35%. Anti-dead zone is going to add extra magnitude onto whatever stick input you make. So for example, if I were to push the stick 65% of the way to up, anti-dead zone is going to add the extra 35% and bring me to 100%. This is going to let you overcome the slow movement in diagonals because, as I said earlier, a perfect diagonal on a round joystick is only about 70% of the way to a max input from the perspective of the game. One thing to keep in mind when you are using anti-dead zone is you want to make sure that your dead zone is a greater value than anti-dead zone, and that's because otherwise, when you're not touching the stick, anti-dead zone would be giving a 35% input somewhere. Dead zone at 40% means that unless you move the stick beyond 40%, it's a 0 input. And this is going to wrap up our tutorial. At this point, you should have an LSW1 installation that's very easy to use and very stable. Hopefully, you also have some kind of idea about what direction to head in to get your controllers to work with the game. If you had any troubles with installation or you need more guidance on controllers, or any other questions you might have, the LEGO Speedrunning Discord link down in the description is going to be your best bet. Not only myself, but a ton of other knowledgeable runners are there, ready to share whatever knowledge they might have that might help you. I hope this has helped somebody, and I hope that this isn't the last LSW1 content that ever gets put on this channel.